we doing, everybody? This is the Pop Music Freak back with another song facts countdown video. I'm counting down my 1,000 favorite songs of all time. We're up to number 924 on the list. It is a first appearance in my countdown by the folk rock duo from the 60s and early 70s, Simon and Garfunkel. The song is their first huge smash, The Sounds of Silence. Now, there's a lot to the story. It was recorded more than once. There was a remix involved. There was a lot going on with the beginning of the two of them really becoming the duo that they became. And a lot of interesting stuff about musicians who played on records, on their records and stuff. So I'm going to get to it all right now. I'm going to start these other song facts on The Sounds of Silence. The Sound of Silence, originally The Sounds of Silence, is a song by the American music duo Simon and Garfunkel. The song was written by Paul Simon over several months in 1963 and 1964. The duo's studio edition of the song led to a record deal with Columbia Records. The original acoustic version was recorded in March of 1964 at Columbia Studios in New York City for their debut album, Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. Let me adjust this, okay. Released on October 19th, 1964. The album was a commercial failure and led to the duo disbanding for the first time. They would do this again a couple more times. Anyway, Simon returned to England and Art Garfunkel to his studies at Columbia University. In 1965, the song began to attract airplay at radio stations in Boston and throughout Florida. The growing airplay led Tom Wilson, the song's producer, to remix the track, overdubbing electric instruments and drums. This remix version was released as a single in September 1965. Simon and Garfunkel will not inform of the song's remix until after its release. The remix hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for the week ending January 1st, 1966, leading the duo to reunite and hastily record their second album, which Columbia titled Sounds of Silence, in an attempt to capitalize on the song's success. The remix single version of the song was included on his follow-up album later. It was featured in the 1967 film The Graduate and was included in the film's soundtrack album. It was additionally released on the Mrs. Robinson EP in 1968, along with 3 other songs from the film: Mrs. Robinson, April Come She Will, and Scarborough Fair Canticle. The Sound of Silence was a top 10 hit in multiple countries worldwide, among them Australia, Austria, West Germany, Japan, and the Netherlands. Generally considered a classic folk rock song, the song was added to the National Recording Registry in the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically important in 2012, along with the rest of the Sounds of Silence album. Since its release, the song was included in later compilations, beginning with the 1972 compilation album Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits. Now here's a story about the origin and original recording. Simon and Garfunkel had become interested in folk music and growing counterculture movement separately in the early 1960s. Having performed together previously under the name Tom and Jerry in the late 1950s, their partnership had since devolved when they began attending college. In 1963, they regrouped and began performing Simon's original compositions locally in Queens. They billed themselves Kane and Gar after old recording pseudonyms and signed up for Gertie's Folk City, a Greenwich Village club that hosted Monday night performances. In September 1963, the duo performed 3 new songs, among them The Sound of Silence, getting the attention of Columbia Records producer Tom Wilson, a young African-American jazz musician who was also helping to guide Bob Dylan's transformation from folk to rock. Simon convinced Wilson to let him and his partner have a studio audition. Their performance of The Sound of Silence got the duo signed to Columbia. The song's origin and basis are unclear, with some thinking that the song commented on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, as the song was recorded 3 months after the assassination, though Simon and Garfunkel had performed a song live as Kane and Gar 2 months before the assassination. Simon wrote The Sound of Silence when he was 21 years old, with Simon explaining that the song was written in his bathroom, where he turned off the lights to better concentrate. The main thing about playing the guitar, though, was that I was able to sit by myself and play and dream, and I was always happy doing that. A used to go into the bathroom because the bathroom had tiles, so it was a slight echo chamber. I'd turn on the faucet so that water would run. I like that sound. It's very soothing to me. And I'd play in the dark. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. According to Garfunkel, the song was first developed in November, but Simon took 3 months to perfect the lyrics, which he claims were entirely written on February 19th, 1964. Garfunkel, introducing the song at a live performance with Simon in Harlem, June 1966, summed up the song's meaning as the inability of people to communicate with each other, not particularly intentionally, but especially emotionally. So what you see around you are people unable to love each other. In a memoir by Sandy Greenberg, as reviewed in People in December 2020, Greenberg states he believes the song reflected the strong bond he had with his college best friend, Garfunkel, who adopted a special epithet, darkness, so as to empathize with Greenberg's sudden onset blindness while in college, even though the song was written by Paul Simon. To promote the release of the debut album Wednesday morning 3 a.m., the duo performed again at Folk City as well as 2 shows at the Gaslight Cafe, which went over poorly. Dave Van Ronk, a folk singer, was at performances and noted that several in the audience regarded their music as a joke. Sound of Silence actually became a running joke for a while there. It was only necessary to start singing Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, and everybody would crack up. Wednesday morning 3 a.m. sold only 3,000 copies upon its October release, and its dismal sales led Simon to move to London, England. While there, he recorded a solo album, the Paul Simon Songbook, which features a rendition of the song called The Sound of Silence, instead of The Sounds of Silence. The original recording of the song is in D minor, using the chords D major, C, B, and F. Simon plays the guitar with a capo on the 6th fret, using the shapes for A minor, G, F, and C chords. He provides the lower vocals for harmony while Garfunkel sings the melody. The vocal span goes from C to F in the song. Now, the remix, as for that, Wednesday morning 3 a.m. had been a commercial failure, like I mentioned, before producer Tom Wilson was alerted that radio stations had begun to play The Sound of Silence in spring 1965. A late-night disc jockey at WBZ in Boston began to spin The Sound of Silence overnight, where it found a college demographic. Students at Harvard and Tufts University responded well, and the song made its way down the East Coast pretty much overnight, all the way to Cocoa Beach, Florida, where it caught the students coming down for spring break. A promotional executive for Columbia went to give away 3 albums of new artists, and beachgoers were interested only in the artist behind The Sound of Silence. He phoned the Home Office in New York, alerting them of its appeal. An alternate version of the story states that Wilson attended Columbia's July 1965 convention in Miami, where the head of the local sales branch raved about the song's airplay. Folk rock was beginning to make waves on pop radio, with songs like The Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man charting high. Wilson listened to the song several times, considering it too soft for a wide release. Wilson had strong feeling about editing the song with explicit rock overtones. As stated by Jeffrey Himes, if Columbia Records producer Tom Wilson hadn't taken the initiative, without the singer's knowledge, to dub a rock rhythm section over their folk rendition, the song would never have become a cultural touchstone, a generation's shorthand for alienation. Wilson had also experimented the previous December with overdubbing an electric band over acoustic tracks by Bob Dylan. These recordings were never officially released, as Dylan and Wilson opted to record new tracks with a live band for what would become the album Bringing It All Back Home. On June 15th, 1965, following sessions for Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, Wilson retained guitarist Al Gorgioni and drummer Bobby Craig from the Dylan sessions, adding guitarist Vinnie Bell and bassist Bob Bushnell. The tempo of the original recording was uneven, making it difficult for the musicians to keep the song in time. Engineer Roy Halley employed a heavy echo on the remix, which was a common trait of the Byrds' hits. The single was first serviced to college FM rock stations, and a commercial single release followed on September 13th, 1965. The lack of consultation with Simon and Garfunkel on Wilson's remix was because, although still contracted to Columbia Records at the time, the musical duo was no longer a working entity. It was not uncommon at the time for producers to add instruments or vocals to previously existing recordings and re-release them as new entities. In the fall of 1965, Simon was in Denmark performing at small clubs and picked up a copy of Billboard, as he had routinely done for several years. Upon seeing The Sound of Silence in the Billboard Hot 100, he bought a copy of Cashbox and saw the same thing. Several days later, Garfunkel excitedly called Simon to inform him of the single's growing success. A copy of a 7-inch single arrived in the mail the next day, and according to friend Al Stewart, Paul was horrified when he first heard it, when the rhythm section slowed down at one point so that Paul and Artie's voices could catch up. Garfunkel was far less concerned about the remix, feeling conditioned to the process of trying to create a hit single. It's interesting, I suppose it might do something, it might sell, he told Wilson. So, that was the story, and it certainly did sell. Sound of Silence first broke in Boston, as I mentioned, where it became one of the top-selling singles in early November 1965. It spread to Miami and Washington, D.C., 2 weeks later, reaching number 1 in Boston and debuting on the Billboard Hot 100. Throughout the month of January 1966, The Sound of Silence had a one-on-one battle with the Beatles' We Can Work It Out for the number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. The former was number 1 for the weeks of January 1st and January 22nd, and held number 2 for the 8th, the 15th, and the 29th, while We Can Work It Out was number 2 on the 1st, number 1 on the 8th and the 15th, fell to number 2 on the 22nd, and climbed back into number 1 on the 29th. So you can say we Can Work It Out was the bigger hit, spending 3 weeks at the top, while Sound of Silence spent 2. But the Simon Garfunkel were very happy with seeing a song coming from absolute nowhere that they didn't even know was remixed be number 1 nationally and break them big time everywhere. Overall, Sound of Silence ended up spending 14 weeks on the Billboard chart. In the wake of the song's success, Simon promptly returned it to the United States to record a new Simon & Garfunkel album at Columbia's request. He later described his experiences learning the song went to number 1, a story he repeated in numerous interviews. I had come back to New York and was staying in my old room at my parents' house. Artie was living at his parents' house too. I remember Artie and I was sitting there in my car one night, parked on a street in Queens, and the announcer on the radio said, "Number 1, Simon & Garfunkel." And Artie said to me, "That's Simon & Garfunkel? They must be having a great time." Because we were on the street corner in my car in Queens smoking a joint. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. For his part, Garfunkel has a different memory of the song's success. We were in LA and our manager called us at the hotel we were staying in. We were both in the same room. We must have bunked in the same room in those days. I picked up the phone. He said, "Well, congratulations. Next week you go from number 5 to number 1 in Billboard." It was fun. I remember pulling open the curtains and letting the brilliant sun come into this very red room, and then ordering room service for a change. That was good. So, yeah, I'm sure that there's probably no greater experience when you're an artist trying to make it, and you focus on what's happening on the charts and out there, if it's selling, and all of a sudden you open the magazine, it's number 1. There's been many stories through the years of many artists having the same story about how jubilation, tears, everything. Ripping Billboard up, being so excited, I think, in one story coming up. When you find out who the artist is, you'll understand. But anyway, back to this song. Looking at the charts again throughout the world, as I mentioned, it hit number 1 in Japan as well, hit number 1 in South Africa, and it hit number 1 in Cashbox along with Billboard. Hit number 2 in New Zealand, number 3 in Australia, Austria, and Zimbabwe. Yes, they have charts there. Number 4 in Canada. Number 11 in the Netherlands. Number 10, actually. And for the year-end chart, Cashbox rated it the number 2 song of 1966. Billboard ranked it lower because they have a different chart system. The weeks that it was moving up the chart at the end of 65 counted towards 65 back then. So it was ranked number 54 in Billboard for the year, which was, probably more likely, if I had to give it a number using my ratings and my crazy formula that I've talked about in a past video, I think it probably would have ranked around 10th or so for the year. Anyway, let's see what else we got. Paul Simon did a solo version in 1974 that never hit the Hot 100, but it hit number 50 on the Easy Listening chart in the U.S. Certifications: won gold in the U.S., won platinum in Italy and the U.K., and won gold in Canada and Denmark. Remakes, let's see, a group called The Bachelors did a remake, 1966, it hit number 3 on the UK chart. Then the rock band Disturbed, back in 2015, did a remake of it, and did it chart in the US? Yes, it hit number 42, and believe it or not, went 3 times platinum, and they downloaded the crap out of it, even though it wasn't a big pop single on the radio or anything. So there you go. That's the story. Those are the song facts for The Sound of Silence. I know it's a little bit long-winded, but a lot happened with this song. I also wanted to mention that when they recorded they rushed in the studio to record a whole album, The Sound of Silence. It included the single I Am a Rock that Paul had released the year before on a solo record, but it didn't do anything. But this time around, it got all the way to number 3, which was the third single, as Homeward Bound was released in the U.S. only as a single, was not on the album, and hit number 5. And just wanted to make note that Homeward Bound and I Am a Rock featured the All-Star Wrecking Crew recorders, the musicians behind it, namely Joe South and Glenn Campbell on guitar, Larry Knechtel on keyboards, Joe Osborne on bass guitar, Hal Blaine on drums, with Bob Johnson producing. Actually, The Sound of Silence itself, when they did the electric overdubs, it included Bobby Craig on drums, Joe Mack on bass, Al Gorgione, and Vinnie Bell on guitar. So they had all-star musicians behind them, which can't hurt when you're trying to make it. The average new artist does not have superstars behind them, or future stars, for sure. Glenn Campbell, this was one of his last session works before he actually was a touring member of the Beach Boys for a year. Just to give you some song facts. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to let you go. Please like the video. Please share the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I think today's the day I get to 900 subscribers. Thank you. Keep it coming. Alright, we got the bell on the bottom right. Hit that bell when you want to know other videos are coming out. I plan on doing 2 more today. And I thank you all so much for watching and listening. There will be a link to the video, to the music video of Sounds of Silence in the description. Click it if you want to see the real thing. All right? Thank you all so much. Peace and love.